Let's dive right into this explainer. If you open up your wallet or check your banking app right now, you probably just see, well, money. But what we're actually looking at is a continuously evolving technology. It's a tool that's been upgraded over millennia to solve some seriously frustrating human problems.
Economists love to spend endless hours debating how to actually value money. But at its core, it was invented out of pure practical desperation. It was quite literally a tool created just to get the things we need to survive.
Because think about it, before this technology existed, early specialized societies relied entirely on bartering. Just imagine being a specialized tailor who wants a loaf of bread, but now you have to convince the local baker that he desperately needs a new pair of pants today. It was exhausting and wildly inefficient.
This perfectly illustrates what we call the double coincidence of wants. So if farmer A has eggs and wants milk, he has to go find someone who not only has milk, but specifically wants eggs in return. If he only finds farmer C, who just has bananas, well, a really complex and downright exhausting chain of trades has to happen just to get breakfast on the table. Moving goods this way simply couldn't scale.
So, what was the fix? Well, the very first major tech upgrade was commodity money. By using items that absolutely everyone naturally wanted, we're talking things like 17th century American beaver pelts or even dried corn, societies built a bridge. And these items worked perfectly because they hit 4 crucial criteria. They were widely desired, durable, portable, and super easy to store.
And just like that, the barter bottleneck completely disappeared. By acting as a standard medium of exchange, you didn't have to hunt down the exact person who wanted your specific goods anymore. It created this seamless cycle of trade, making getting what we actually want infinitely more convenient.
Now, these commodities transformed into true financial tools by unlocking 3 distinct functions. First, they became a medium of exchange to replace that clunky barter system. Second, they became a unit of value, kind of like inches on a ruler, so we could finally compare the price of, say, apples and swords. And crucially, they became a store of value. This meant you could sell something perishable today and actually save that purchasing power for next winter.
But as economies absolutely exploded in size, a brand new bug in the system popped up: physical weight. Moving literal chests of metal or dragging heavy sacks of grain, that just didn't scale for long-distance trade. We desperately needed a lighter upgrade. Now, this necessary leap to paper, what we call the dematerialization of money, was definitely not an overnight phenomenon. It actually took centuries of trial, error, and sheer economic necessity, stretching all the way from medieval China to modern America.
Let's start in early China, where we actually see the precursors to modern banking. During the Tang Dynasty, which peaked around the 8th and 9th centuries, merchants could use counting houses called guifang to deposit their funds for a small fee, keeping them safe from fire and theft. In return, the empire introduced something called flying cash. This was basically paper scrip issued by the treasury that merchants could carry across provinces and easily cash in at local tax depots. Pretty brilliant, right?
But things got messy. After the Tang Dynasty collapsed, copper hoarding became so severe that rival kingdoms forced merchants in Sichuan to use heavily debased iron and clay coins. Literally, imagine trying to buy a horse with a wheelbarrow full of dirt and scrap iron. It was an absolute nightmare for commerce.
So, out of sheer necessity, merchants in 993 AD invented jiaozi. These were iron coin-denominated bills that completely revolutionized trade. Moving physical metal had gotten so disruptive and, frankly, ridiculous that merchants simply started dispersing these paper bills instead of hauling tons of iron. And just like that, the world had its first fiduciary paper money. Unsurprisingly, though, a totally private system of printing money quickly led to overprinting and rampant forgeries. To fix this, the government had to step in. By 1023, the Song dynasty created the world's first strictly regulated public order paper money, and it was rigorously backed by real metallic reserves in the vault. But the system wasn't exactly foolproof. Facing massive military costs from northern invasions, the Song dynasty did what so many governments historically end up doing: they started printing unbacked notes. They completely detached the paper from the metal reserves, which led to massive depreciation and practically crippled the economy.
What's wild is that centuries later, 17th century Europe ran headfirst into this exact same bug. Sweden had backed its monetary system with copper to try and boost global prices. The end result? Everyday citizens trying to conduct basic business while lugging around absurdly heavy, literal plates of solid copper.
Enter a Dutch merchant named Johann Palmstruck. He saw the utter misery these copper plates were causing and realized there was immense profit to be made in convenience. So he convinced the Swedish crown to let him hold the heavy metal in a bank and issue lightweight paper in its place. And just like the merchants in 10th century Sichuan, the Swedish public enthusiastically embraced paper. It is absolutely amazing to see the cyclical nature of human innovation, you know? A technological upgrade that immediately smoothed out the frictions of daily commerce, just playing out again on a completely different continent.
But history definitely has a way of repeating itself. Much like the Song dynasty, Palmstruck just couldn't resist the temptation of the printing press. He issued way more paper than he actually had copper. And when the public finally caught on, it triggered a massive panic-driven bank run in 1668. His bank collapsed, he went to prison, and the whole mess forced the creation of Europe's very first state-run central bank. This intense struggle between paper and metal continued right up until the 20th century. The final tie was officially severed in 1971 with the Nixon shock, which ended the US dollar's convertibility to gold. And this finalized the global shift to modern fiat systems, meaning our money is now completely decoupled from physical commodities, running entirely on government decree and, ultimately, public trust. So now that money has evolved all the way from heavy metal to paper and is no longer pegged to gold at all, what form is this technology going to take next? As we increasingly digitize our world, how will this ancient tool continue to adapt? Will it become purely virtual? It's definitely something to think about the next time you tap your phone to pay for coffee, participating in a massive chain of innovation that started with beaver pelts and iron coins.